the truth is the most beautiful buildings and the most beautiful art in the world is created to honor God, if you think about it. Right? The most beautiful buildings in the world, the cathedrals, like churches, some of these mosques, some of the paintings and the statues and all this stuff. Typically, these were designed and built by religious people to honor the highest thing. Architecture today is just about functionality.
Or not even. Some of it's not even function anymore.
but that's all it is. It's just functional. It's like, well, why should I? I've actually had this debate with people because I was talking to some of my Christian American friends, and I was talking about how, like, when I'm in some parts of the USA, I can't tell if something is a bank or a church or a gym or a Walmart. Like, it's the same building, right? Like, there's churches that look like Pizza Hut, and I'm like, it's good to have a church, but why not make it beautiful, right? Like,
well, I think they kind of lost the sense of what is beauty.
Yeah.
And part of that's arrogance, maybe, and part of that's ignorance. Arrogance because we see kind of beauty, like you go and see like St. Peter's, in Italy, and you're like in Vatican City, you're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. But if you're ignorant of it, it's hard to do it yourself, right? And then if you're arrogant about it, like I'm gonna do something more like inventive, and then you go and create Pizza Hut. But
that's because you have that perspective, right? A couple of weeks ago, I was at the Duomo in Milan. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I was in awe, outside, inside, just looking at. I was like, no one makes stuff like this anymore. Like, this does not exist
with
anymore.
all our technology.
It's crazy.
Our ability.
You think this was built made hundreds of years ago, and the intricacy and the detail. I'm like, gosh, like the amount of thousands of years of man time that was just put into this to honor God, and to create this, building of worship. Even just in terms of the art, in terms of music, paintings, all these things, they've all gone downhill. And again, I think that's kind of inevitable. If it's just comes, and I think people have also forgotten that beauty in itself is a function. There is value in something being beautiful. Right?
What is beautiful? How do you define beauty?
Wow. It's a combination of objective and subjective standards. Are we talking about buildings? Are we talking about women? Are we talking about?
Well, there's a sort of all perfect beauty is going to be true, and it's going to be good, and there's harmony to it. Proportionality to it. Symmetry. I think there's principles that cross from a woman to a building to a, meaning like in the human person, there's, if you see goodness and truth in someone, usually they're seen beautiful to you, like overall. And then obviously with their face and their features and stuff, beauty often includes symmetry. Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but when you see it, right? When you see it, even someone who doesn't really think about these things, if you show, okay, here's an ugly building, here's a beautiful building, like everyone can tell the difference. Even when it comes to people, when it comes to anything, right? A beautiful table versus an ugly table, people can tell the difference. So exactly how to verbalize that, I'm not sure.
Why are people creating such ugly stuff now, though? Because I think you're right. I think when you see it, you're kind of captivated by it. That's the power of beauty. But we're producing such ugly stuff.
I have two perspectives on this, actually. I've never even thought of this, but as soon as you asked it. I think one part is just, like I said, just the laziness and and just something just being functional, right? As long as it functions, we don't need to go beyond functionality, right? You can just have a gray box, ugly building, and as long as it does its function and it doesn't fall over.
And even the functionality is often really limited.
Yeah.
Because it's like to what end function? Like, so I can go eat my KFC.
Yeah.
As opposed to I can have a beautiful meal with my family and like honor my family with this beautiful space or something.
Yeah, and the lower the ideal, the lower the standard for the beauty, right?
Yes.
So that is why the most beautiful buildings are things like cathedrals, right? Because that is to honor the ultimate good, right? And then if you have a place, the room where you eat your family meals is probably going to be more beautiful, and you'll make it more beautiful than the room where you eat your snacks with your coworkers.
Or right? Park your car.
Exactly, right? Because they're different levels and standards. Yeah. So I think the reason why there's not as much beauty being created in the world right now is because that ultimate highest power, fewer and fewer people are believing in that and creating things in honor for that. So that's why you just kind of fall back into the functionality. I do think that there's also a bit of a cynical thing that's going on with some elements of society where things are being uglified intentionally.
That's dark stuff.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of an attack on beauty and an attack on aesthetics. And you see it, right? Like there's even, I don't know, when it comes to modeling, right? If you female models, right, there was, okay, like we want them to be beautiful. We want to have a certain standard that's aspirational, right? It's not just about looking like the complete average person. It's like, it's aspirational. On a men's fitness magazine, right? You don't just want the average American or British man on the front cover. No, you want the guy who's like super jacked fitness model with like amazing proportions and shoulders and pecs, and like, it's an aspirational figure. You look at superheroes, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Cyclops, like they're all jacked. You know, you can see their abs through their, you can see their abs through their outfits, everything like that. And it's an ideal, right? It's something that, you know, a young boy or a young man is like, oh, cool. You know, I want to look like Arnold. I want to look like Sylvester Stallone. I want to look like Batman. I want to look like Superman, whatever. And I think there's something cool about that aspirational thing. Whereas now it's like, oh no, that's an unrealistic body standard, right? You know, we're going to harm people's mental health and this and this. Let's make, I mean, if you go in the stores now, some of the mannequins are fat. Right? Like the mannequins that they hang the clothes on. And, you know, there's on the cover of women's magazines in particular, like might just put a morbidly obese woman on there. But
do you think the extreme can go in both directions?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think the the oversized mannequin or the plus size mannequin in some ways is a response to another extreme, which is like a hypersexual skin thick version of women. And so I think the intentions are mixed, right? I do think there's intentions, I'm sure, from some that ideologues are like, we're just going to like suppress beauty as it like true beauty and just kind of create, I don't know, sameness, or in their pursuit of diversity, basically to say, well, everything is equal, right? In terms of its beauty. So you're not allowed to say one thing is more beautiful than another. But at the same time, like there are like true beauty is not a thin, a super skinny model, right? I mean, you can make that argument, of course, but I think there's a thread here that can be positive.
Yes, there can be. Look, I think we live. I say this often, that we live in the age of overcorrection, right? If you think about it, this is why I think so many. This is why I think so many people liked the 1990s. In the 2000s, the 1990s and the 2000s, no iPhones,
I think were, that's why
it's a factor. But I think that's when most Western countries achieved the harmony and optimal balance, right? Stuff was just balanced. It was like, okay, cool. We've overcome the racism and the sexism and the vicious homophobia and the segregation and all these other things throughout these previous decades and centuries. That people got wrong, and that people were just, you know, way too much hostility and division and mistreatment of people, right? We've overcome that level of genuine bigotry. And we just have this moment, this 20-year period, let's say, where cool, like we've just got the balance. People are not at each other's throats. The political climate isn't crazy. Yeah, sure, you've got conservatives and liberals, but they're not like at each other's throats. There weren't major culture war, like not like it is now. We're having major culture wars going on, and things are so polarized that, you know, even if you say that, you know, a man doesn't get pregnant, that was not a conservative statement just, you know, 10 years ago or 20, let alone 20 years ago. So I think that what's happened is everything has overcorrected, right? So this is now where you get the quote unquote anti-racist movement has become racist, right? The quote unquote feminists have become, you know, in some cases, man-hating, you know, almost female supremacist types. Or you've got the other branch of it where they don't even know what a woman is anymore. And they've actually switched into becoming not even a men's rights movement, but like a confused men's supremacy movement that dominates women and even threatens them if they don't get on board. You had the people who even do support abortion go from safe, legal, and rare, it's a necessary evil, don't really like it, but maybe, you know, we need this thing, to, you know, shout your abortion, and abortion is good, and abortion is pro-social, and, you know, people making TikToks of them going to, whoa, like massive overcorrection. You see it in the political discourse, right? The way that you can go on social media now and you'll see old people who should know better, people who are 70 plus throwing insults and vicious barbs at each other on social media like they're children on a playground. right? In the past, yeah, there was always political discourse. They could just debate. It could get spicy, but the level of personal attacks and pettiness and just childlike behavior, like it's all just overcorrected. It's just, it's gone. All right, we overshot the mark on all these things happening simultaneously. You could argue that absolutely, if you go back to the 80s or 90s, or maybe even before that, this female ideal of, the ultra skinny, size 0, anorexic type looking model that is being kind of put in everyone's face. Okay, that's encouraging, even in some cases, eating disorders and body dysmorphias and stuff like that for young girls. Okay, maybe we want something that's a little more in line with, an actual healthy body.